And of course, the deepest perspective, which I think guides all of us, is that this place is a few hundred meters from David City, a few hundred meters, same place, where 3,000 years ago, I read a book by Barbara Tuchman. I'm reading now her fifth book in succession. But the book that I recommend that you read is Bible and Sword. It's one of her earliest books. Did you read it, sir? You should read it, definitely. And in Bible and Sword, she makes an observation that the Jewish people are the only people in the world who live in the same land, speak the same language, have the same capital, and have the same religion as they had, with the same name, as they had 3,000 years ago. So Jerusalem, Zion, is the pulsating heart of our nation. It's where the Jewish kings ruled, where the Jewish prophets preached, and where the people of Israel prayed, and the people of Israel continue to pray. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, we never forgot. We never forgot. And we came back. Quickly. Can you hear me? You have saboteurs here, Mike. It's good. Well, it's pre-election. You never know. So we came back. And 19th century, Jerusalem had a Jewish majority. And of course, it created a great renaissance, which continued to grow, obviously, after we recovered our independence. When the city was under siege, you know, they were sending convoys, and there were requests to divert our forces to other places and not to break the siege, because territorially there were other places. And Ben-Gurion said, no, this is Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem. And of course, we were able to lift the siege. And then 19 years later, also to lift the siege on the old city. And it's a reunited city, and I want to guarantee you, as long as I have anything to do with it, it will never be divided again. Ever. Not going to happen. Now, the fact that we have this long history and this deep attachment to our city, the fact that it's our capital, is a historical and current fact. But it's amazing that it wasn't recognized, even though it's in front of everybody's faces. And we have to congratulate President Trump for recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moving the embassy here. And we have to recognize also Ambassador Friedman's pivotal role in this action, and I do that again and again. Now, I want you to know that President Trump consulted with me before he did this move. And he said, what do you think will happen? Will there be a lot of violence? Will be demonstrations, protests throughout the Arab world? And I said, look, I can't guarantee that there won't be such manifestations of protest, but I don't think so. You know, I just don't think so. Anyway, he did it. He did it. And what happened as a result? Nothing. Now, this wasn't the only place for which we had an historical attachment. There's another place. And that place had Jewish presence some 2,000 years ago, which continued until the 8th century, until a great earthquake shook us from that place. And that place is the Golan Heights. We uncovered some 30 synagogues, ancient synagogues in the Golan Heights. Some have been remarkably reconstructed. And again, President Trump decided to recognize the Golan Heights as part of Israel, sovereign state of Israel. And people said, again, there will be a tremendous convulsion. And what happened? Nothing. Why did nothing happen? How come? Well, the reason nothing happened is because something very big is happening. And what is happening is the transformation of Israel in the minds of many in the Middle East. It is no longer being perceived as an enemy, but as an indispensable ally against the common enemy of militant Islam. First, the one led by the militant Sunnis, Al-Qaeda and Daesh, and more by the militant Shiites, of course by Iran and its various proxies. The Arab states recognize that this militancy is a danger to them, no less than it is a danger to us, and therefore they make common cause with us. But as they make common cause with us to defend ourselves against a common foe, a common enemy, I would say the relations begin to normalize in other fields as well, not only to drive out the bad, but to foster the good, economic relations, technological relations, and other things as well. There is a clear shift, and that is important. It's important for peace. This is the way peace will ultimately be achieved. Now, the fact that we have common interests is not necessarily the same as common values. That is not necessarily the same. I do not claim that the Arab countries around us are Western European democracies. They are not. But they also understand that unless we cooperate, we could be threatened by a great evil power that would make the possibility of change, the hope for a better future for our peoples, something that will simply disappear and dissipate. But there is also the sharing of common values, and that's what we have here today. What we have today is the alliance of those who believe in our great Judeo-Christian tradition. We have no better friends in the world than our Christian friends. And I want to thank each of you for your friendship. And it's no accident that in Israel, that's the only place in the Middle East where Christians are free to practice their faith, complete religious freedom for all, and especially for Christians who are constantly under attack in the Middle East. Constantly. You know, at the beginning of the 20th century, the Middle East had 20% of its population was Christian. It's down to 4% today, including in the city of Bethlehem, that used to be predominantly Christian. It's down to 20%. And what we want to do in Israel is to continue to guard the religious freedom of all. And our Christian friends recognize this, and they appreciate that for this reason as well. So thank you. Thank you for your solidarity, always. And I think it's also an important fact that you mentioned, Michael, that with the pictures that flashed on the screen for a minute, it's important to understand that Jewish political Zionism would not have been possible with the 19th century Christian Zionism that preceded it, and in fact helped steer the course of modern Zionism. It's a fact that when Herzl spoke at the beginning, I think in 1903 in London, his greatest supporters were Christian Zionists, including Lloyd George, including Balfour and others. So there is an intimate relationship between Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism, and one helped make the other possible. I think that today we have a common cause not only to protect Christians and Yazidis and Muslims and Jews, obviously, everywhere, but to protect our view of a civilization that guarantees individual rights, guarantees democracies, guarantees individual freedom. These are the elements that guide us. What does Israel stand for? Freedom. Freedom. The freedom of a nation that reemerged from the ashes and from exile. The freedom of people to speak their mind. The freedom of people to practice their faith. This is what we stand for. Now, those who oppose us, which you mentioned, the new anti-Semitism, I think the best way to fight them is not merely to speak the truth, but it's also to expose these delegitimizers. Who do they stand with? Who do they stand with? They stand with Hamas, who shoots people in the back of the head in the square in Gaza. They stand with Daesh, who beheads people. They stand with Iran, the great protector of human rights. This is who they stand for. And I think that too has to be exposed. It's not only defense, it's also offense. And I would say, from my experience in everything, offense first. Offense first. Delegitimize the delegitimizers. You should do that everywhere, in the campuses, in the media, and here. So I welcome the opportunity to speak to the Friends of Zion. I welcome the opportunity to speak to our Christian friends, and I welcome the opportunity to speak to the press. Any questions? Please.
Yes, Prime Minister, we have some questions from you. First of all, Ward Simpson, president of God TV. Please.
God TV? You can't beat that. God TV.
God watches God TV. Mr. Prime Minister, you're loved around the world. We'd like to ask you a question. What is your plans, what's your vision this year for the situation in the Middle East, especially regarding Iran? And also, what is your vision for the economic situation here in Israel?
Well, I think the most important thing is to make sure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons and that its march towards empire and conquest is stopped. I think that President Trump's policy of putting maximum economic pressure on Iran is the right one. And I'm glad to see that it's been increased recently, more sanctions. I know that it's having a telling effect on Iran's ability to fund its aggression. We can see that. And equally, we are committed to preventing Iran from entrenching itself militarily in our borders, especially in Syria. And we take the necessary action to prevent that. I think that's a necessity. Because if Iran has its way, then the Middle East will collapse. And I would say categorically, if Israel wasn't here, in the heart of the Middle East, then Iran would have won. It, by the way, would have already had nuclear weapons. So we are committed to both goals, preventing Iran from developing a nuclear arsenal and preventing Iran from conquering our part of the Middle East. And we are cooperating with the United States in many, many ways, more ways than I can describe here, to achieve those two aims, and they remain our aims. They've been my aims all the time. Through changing administrations. And believe me, those administrations really changed. So that's the first point. The second point, you asked about the Israeli economy. The Israeli economy is flourishing. Once we converted Israel into a free market economy, something that I devoted a great deal of my time, both as Prime Minister and Finance Minister, to do, the inherent ingenuity in our people broke forth into thousands of startups, into great innovation and great entrepreneurship. And this is odd, you know, because, I looked at a satisfaction poll that people do. I mean, there are various polls that people say, a happiness index, but there's also a satisfaction index. All right. So the lowest polling is by one institution, and it had a poll in 2003, and they asked people, is the situation in Israel good or bad? Good was 11%. Bad was 60%, okay? That's 2003, okay? And today, what do you think the numbers are? It's more or less reversed. More or less reversed, just like that. The good went up like that to over 50%, and the bad went down to 10%. And the happiness index, Israel rates 11th in the world. 11th in the world. Well ahead of the United States, of Germany, of France and other countries, Britain. Not before Norway, or Denmark, things like that. But this is an amazing achievement, and part of that achievement, a necessary part of that, is the change that we effected in the Israeli economy. So the Israeli economy became not merely a high-tech economy, not merely a knowledge economy, knowledge-based economy. It became, first of all, a free economy. And if it's not free markets, you can have all the science and all the technology and all the engineering capability but it doesn't do anything. It's like the former Soviet Union. It doesn't do anything. They had brilliant mathematicians, brilliant physicists, brilliant metallurgists. Doesn't do anything. By itself, science, technology, and even education doesn't take you anywhere unless you have free markets. And I'm very proud to have had a role in transforming Israel into a market economy. What does that do? Well, we just had a number the other day. You didn't read about it in our press because it's good. But the unemployment rate in Israel right now is, you know? You want to guess? It's 3.7. Okay? I think the European average is about twice that. So it's a growing economy. Our exports are booming. As long as we continue to maintain a free economy, then my prospects for the Israeli economy are tremendous, because there is a revolution right now in the world. It's a revolution of unbelievable proportions, and we're right at the cusp of it. We're right at the head of it. It's I won't bore you with this, but it's called artificial intelligence, connectivity, and big data, and they're all combined, and that's what you see. That's all the things that you see is the combination of these three things, and Israel is smacking it, which makes us not merely a good economy, but in many ways a powerful economy, and in some cases second only to the United States. For example, in cyber. That's important. Yeah, and many other areas too. So I would say this, vis-a-vis the strategic situation in the Middle East, okay, we have to continue to push the bad, and vis-a-vis the Israeli economy, we have to continue fostering the good.
Let's have a question now from Israeli media, Galei Tzahal, IDF radio, and I have a feeling it will not be about Iran.
אדוני ראש הממשלה, בתקופה האחרונה נשמעו דברים קשים מאוד על מערכת המשפט, בין היתר משר מהליכוד. מה עמדתך ביחס לדברים האלה?
קודם כל אני אגיד לך את עמדתי, אחר כך אני אגיד לך מה ששמעתי. עמדתי היא שמבחינת מערכת המשפט, בתי המשפט, השופטים, ישראל היא